I made a follow-up video a few days ago on the Battle for Middle-earth Reforged game, a fan project to remaster the old BFME titles from the mid-2000s, and in that video I put a throwaway joke just saying, please somebody remaster Lord of the Rings Conquest, not thinking really anything of it and moving on my merry way. Yet the next day, the very next day on my Discord, it pinged. Not like any other usual ping, you know, this one felt dark, terrifying, somewhat different, but with an ounce of hope within it. So I opened up this DM and oh god, what have I unveiled? And then I saw it. Conquest Reimagined. Whilst being a big hit back in the day, Lord of the Rings Conquest wasn't the biggest of titles, so I think I should probably give it a little bit of background. Released in 2009, published by EA, it was developed by a studio that at the time went by the name of Pandemic. Heard of them? Well, you might have heard a small series that they made back in the day called Star Wars Battlefront, perhaps the second of which being one of the best games of all time, and that is a fact, my friends. A Star Wars game that focused on nothing but immersing players in the battles from the movies, from Naboo to the Death Star, from Hoth to Yavin 4. And hey, I don't really think I need to explain what Battlefront is. It's very popular. But with its success, and especially the second one in 2005, came somewhat of a spin-off. EA had the Lord of the Rings license at that time, so when they acquired Pandemic in 2007, the development team, not the virus, the team started to work on the Lord of the Rings version of their beloved Battlefront game. And they called it Lord of the Rings Conquest. Upon release in 2009, it was incredible. Much like Battlefront, the game would take you through the stories and battles of the movies, solo or with another player. Having matchmaking, being able to create your own parameters, picking maps, battle sizes, and of course your troops. Being able to play with 2, 3, 4 people on split screen. You know those types of games where you'd come home from school, you just load it up with your mate, and you'd play those split screen battles for hours and hours on end. Star Wars Battlefront 2 and Lord of the Rings Conquest were those games for me. Some of the most satisfying things I thought were playing as the bowman, being able to use your melee attack and kicking orcs off the walls of Helm's Deep, or getting the chance to be Aragorn and take the fight to the front lines, hacking and slicing to your heart's content. And the mission, oh, the missions were incredible. Stopping the bombers from destroying the walls of Hornburg, taking them down with your arrows, or hiding from Felbeast as the Nazgûls ride overhead in Osgiliath. Of course, you would get the chance, much like Star Wars Battlefront, to not only play as the normal units from the movies, but so many others. You get bowmen, you get infantry, heavies, even stealth troops that could cloak themselves, sneak behind trolls, jump on their backs and take them down from behind. But you could also play as pretty much any other hero from the sagas relating to the maps that you were playing and at the time. But this wasn't limited to what we saw in the trilogy of movies from Peter Jackson. The game also had extra stuff, working with the content and lords from other places in the Lord of the Rings universe, showing some of the great battles that we didn't get to see in the trilogy, like taking back the mines of Moria and becoming Gimli in the darkness to destroy those thieving orcs. And who can forget those special missions, playing as the Ents and the Hobbits, trying to defend the Shire from the oncoming invasion. All this tied together with Howard Shore's incredible score, and whilst reviews of critics are somewhat mixed from the game, it was never successful as Star Wars Battlefront, but this was my jam. I loved that game. Pandemic unfortunately was shut down shortly after, and since then nothing has really come out like it. I mean, there were 2 Star Wars Battlefront EA games that came out quite recently, but hey, only one of them was actually decent, and still, even then for me, it didn't quite capture that same co-op gameplay style that I used to love from Pandemic's development days. Of course, it has been quite a while since the last Lord of the Rings game, at least on a big scale. Normally these things go hand to hand in movies, so it's kind of understandable. Yet even when The Hobbit released, it didn't have the same resurgence of the franchise with new games and media like we saw with the original trilogy. But now on the horizon, we're getting closer and closer to the Amazon series, one of the biggest TV shows of all time with the biggest budget that has ever been put to screen, and with it we'll get a slew of new games to fit. There was an MMO that was cancelled, unfortunately, yet we do know about a Gollum game, but that kind of looks interesting. Seriously, I keep getting DMs from people telling me to cover this Gollum game, but look at it, come on, it looks awful. Never have I actually looked at a trailer and a bit of gameplay and it's made me feel a little bit ill. But hey, maybe that is just more the reason for me to play it, so who knows. But this is where Conquest Reimagined comes in. It's a fan-made remaster of the original Lord of the Rings Conquest game, hoping to bring back the glory on new systems. Much like the Battle for Middle-earth Reforged fan project, however, it isn't just going to remaster graphics, sounds, and everything we had before, but there will be some changes, big improvements to not only the gameplay, but also the content that's in the game. You see, something I've noticed and we've seen in the past with these modern day day remasters, everyone's so excited to get the games that they loved from their childhood. But unfortunately, games have grown, games have changed, and when you remaster a game and you just put on a graphics overhaul, maybe put some 4K textures in, and yeah, it looks shiny, but the mechanics still feel outdated because it was a game that was made in the mid-2000s or the late 90s, so it still will feel and play like that unless you start to change the mechanics to put it up to the modern day standard that we have now. So what are the devs actually adding to the game? What will we be getting with Conquest Reimagined? Well, there's going to be more combat combinations, of course. We got those really cool combos in the original Conquest game, yet there's going to be way more they can do, such as executions and of course more gory and bloody deaths. More maps will be included, and they will be a much larger scale to what we previously saw. This is being made on a completely new and fresh engine, Unreal 4, which is going to be able to implement some of the bigger scale stuff that we didn't really get to see when the game initially came out on PS3 and Xbox 360. Hardware was limited, so hopefully this can be a big change. The game is also set to introduce a whole new class. Originally we got our 4 main classes: two-handed swordsman, stealth, mage, and archer, and they were all pretty good. They all did pretty different things, and using each of them gave a good variety of gameplay depending on how you wanted to go, in almost a D&D style of play. Now we're going to get a 5th, a new experienced warrior class that uses a sword and shield in combination. Now this doesn't sound all that impressive on the start, but this could never really be done with the original Conquest. You see, engines back in the day didn't really have those sort of mechanics, and especially when you're playing on a console with a controller, being able to use a separate sword and shield to attack, the game just didn't really utilize those weapons in that way. But because it's now an Unreal 4 with a new in-depth combat system, this means utilizing both swords and shields as separate entities, being able to slice and defend in separate attacks and movement is now going to be possible within the game, which is why the implementation of this new unit is coming in. Now, there is very little in terms of actual true information that we've got from Lord of the Rings Conquest Reimagined so far, but boy, am I excited to see what happens in the future. Of course, there is still that worry that Lord of the Rings and Middle-earth Enterprises, I think they're called, something like that, are going to come along and say, stop it, can't do that anymore. But I explained most of that in my Battle for Middle-earth Reforged video, so if you haven't seen that already, go and check it out. But so far, we have been given a teaser for the Helm's Deep map in the game. The Unreal 4 engine is really used to its fullest potential and looks gorgeous. The ruins going up to the keep where the last defense of Gondor happened before King Theoden and Aragorn charged out on horseback down through the castles, the keep, and onto the walkway below, just before, spoiler warning, Gandalf came to save the day. Maybe we can even reenact that within this new game. But this teaser is for something much bigger, and I've heard on the grapevine, in other words the devs DM me and told me, that there will be a full developer blog and our first bit of the actual game will be shown within the next few weeks and what they are working on, so be sure to stick around the channel for that sort of thing. But please let me know what you think in the comments. Did you play Lord of the Rings Conquest back in the day, and what did you think of it? I know it wasn't quite as popular as Star Wars Battlefront, and maybe I'm just imagining it as being better than it was, but hey, I have some fond memories of that game. So please leave your comments down below. Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it, leave a dislike if you didn't, and there'll be links to everything like their website and Discord and stuff if you want to go and check out more for yourself, but I will be bringing all the info that we get onto the channel. But until then, I will see you in the next one.